Can I?
Yes.
Yes, I think that there is a big responsibility, not so much of the European institutions, also of course, but of the state governments, or international governments if you prefer, but the word nation itself should be put in discussion, I think, when we discuss what our identities are. The present institutional framework of the European Union is largely based upon national sovereignty, because the most important decisions that are made at the EU level are not taken by the, let's say, federal institutions, the Parliament and the Commission, but by the Council, which is the organ where individual governments are represented. Even after the Lisbon Treaty, the role of the Council is paramount. And it is a very useful exercise of public relations for national governments to decide something in the Council behind closed doors, usually unanimously, with I'll give you something to you, you'll give something to me. It results in an incomprehensible, often incomprehensible compromise that has to be swallowed as it is by the institutions. Then the heads of governments go back home and say, oh, you know, Europe is obliging us to do this and this and this, and they had decided it, but it was behind closed doors. So the consequence is that in the eyes of our fellow citizens, Europe has always been portrayed as something that is very, very successful because we live in peace. We have been living in peace for 70 years. That is something that is absolutely new in the history of Europe, and that is obviously the biggest, most important, exceptional result of the European integration, but it seems that this is the only achievement and the only possible achievement. Whereas I think that at the point where we are, if we want to go a step forward, we have to reconsider the things from the roots. And it is not possible to tell a European who was born after World War II, as the large majority of Europeans are nowadays, that we have no wars between France and Germany. For a historian, for an educated person, that is something still now incredible, a precious result that has to be preserved against any possible step back. But you cannot advertise Europe just on this basis. If you want to go further, you have to ask, what does it mean to say we in politics? In the history, in the contemporary history, cultural history of Europe, there have been two main questions, two main answers to this question. One was the romantic German reply that was first specified at the beginning of the 19th century. The nation is a big family based upon being of the same blood, Blut und Boden, as it was said in Germany. This interpretation of the nation, of the political entity, is nowadays fallen into disrepute because of the consequences it led to in the history of contemporary Germany. The other answer was the French one. The French had the war with Germany on Alsace. Alsace is a territory of, linguistically speaking, of German origin, but they wanted to be French. Wir sind Franzosen, the people in Alsace used to say 1 century ago, 1.5 century ago. And one intellectual from that area, Ernst Renan, made a speech that is the example of what the French idea of nation was. Nation, he said, is an everyday plebiscite. It is based upon the will to be part of a nation in a cultural meaning. So there were these two, naturalistic on the one hand and culturalistic on the other, ideas of nation in the history of Europe. But nowadays, this culturalistic idea of the nation has two different versions, because no one, not even the extreme right today, would dare saying that we must be a nation because we are of the same blood. They say we are a nation because we share an archaic common heritage. That is more or less the root of those who say European identity should be based upon Christianity, because Christianity coincided with Europe 1,000 years ago, before the Enlightenment, before modernity, before pluralism, before liberalism, before democracy, and so on, so on, so on. So the belonging, but not choosing to belong, being obliged to belong to a community, Gemeinschaft in German, as opposed to Gesellschaft, that is a society where you are a member of, which you are a member of because you chose to be, is nowadays the idea, the culturalistic idea of the nation, of, in my opinion, of the traditionalist, the authoritarian, the illiberal part of Europe. Whereas the only possible democratic idea of a political entity in a more and more secularized and diverse society as ours is that was at first proposed by Jürgen Habermas, the German philosopher, at the time when Germany was still divided. And in contrast with those who said that Germany should be considered as the place where German is spoken, or as the place where German culture was traditionally dominant, he said, no, we should be considered German on the basis of the values, of the civic principles of the 1949 Constitution. That was called the patriotism of the Constitution. This was something that some historians found was very well grounded in the cultural history of the very word patrie in French, or homeland. That is, at the beginning, etymological and philological study of what the word patrie meant at the beginning, as opposed to nowadays you could say to nationalism, was the love for the liberties that are typical of our nation. This was researched in the cultural history and in the use, the very use of this word, patrie, by an Italian historian that teaches in Princeton, Maurizio Viroli, who wrote a book about this and found out that at the beginning, patriotism was love for our freedom. That was true in the Netherlands, in Britain, in the United States, and especially in France. Nowadays, I think this is the only possible democratic idea of a political entity that we can have in societies where our origins are diverse, where the paramount problem is integrating people coming from different cultural and political traditions. We only can be part of a political entity if we share the same values that the constitutional heritage of all our countries now is the consequence. We are European nowadays because we share the common values of human rights, individual freedom, self-determination of the individual, and be aware, this is not natural. And this is unfortunately not, or not yet, the rule in the entire world. And we in Europe, we have a particularly demanding idea of this, even in comparison with other nations of Western origin. For example, in comparison with the United States, we don't like the death penalty, we don't think that carrying weapons is a constitutional right, and we have a more demanding idea of what the rights of citizens, of each individual citizens should be. So nowadays, if we want to have the European project go on, we can only base this on one idea. We share a heritage that is very important, that is shaped about our constitutions, that is summarized with the Nice Charter in the European treaties. We are Europeans because our mission, our universalistic mission, is the affirmation of individual rights, civic liberties, solidarity, and so on and so on and so on. And this was, according to a very interesting sociologist that is mostly known for his work on the sociology of political parties, Roberto Michels, the English idea of patriotism. The word, the phrase constitutional patriotism that Habermas invented for Germany was already in use in England for a lot of time, as Michels discovered in his work on patriotism. And mind you, Michels was born a radical German social democrat, and he became a committed Italian fascist. Even before World War I, he became Italian because he had a too demanding idea of what democracy should be inside political parties. He found it not really existing in the German social democrat society. Well, frankly, if it is so hypercritical, I prefer a frank authoritarian dominion to a false democracy. So this is a lesson also for today. If you want to build something democratic, you should be realistic enough to make your choices in the framework of what is of the existing institution, of what is possible to make better of what they are today. But at the same time, you have to build it upon a set of constitutionally founded human rights, individual liberty, a set of values that makes us different from, unfortunately still different from large parts of the world. If you go to China, they immediately understand what being Europeans means. If you go to a Middle Eastern country, they immediately understand. If we only are focused on our countries, of course we only see the differences. But what it really is important in a global world and in a historical perspective is this. I propose to call this the patriotism of the European Grundnorm, merging together Habermas's patriotism of the Constitution and the Hans Kelsen's, the Austrian constitutionalist idea of a fundamental law that is the basis of all the other laws. Of course, this cannot be advertised to the general public, and we need an advertiser that can do it for us.